Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mind Games podcast, where each episode we piece together the puzzle that is mental health with a bit of stuff in between. So this is real talk from two very real people. I am, of course, the usual Thomas Wellburn, chronic health warrior and multimedia extraordinaire. Joining me on this inner path of discovery is my co-presenter and the master of positivity, Chris Allan, occupational health advisor, mental health first aid instructor, and all-round great guy. How are you doing, Chris?
Oh, thanks very much. Again, big smile on my face after that. But you're not the usual health warrior. You're an incredibly special.
Well,
not unusual. I wouldn't say you're unusual.
I'll take that. You're trying to dig yourself out of a hole now?
Kind of, yeah, I suppose I am, yeah. I was trying to say special.
There's nothing wrong.
But special's got unusual connotations as well, right?
Yeah. But, I take special. Special's nice. Makes you feel different,
Absolutely, yeah.
In a good way. There's nothing wrong with being a bit different.
Absolutely. I'm wildly different from a lot of people in the way I used to be as well.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, big time.
It's just growing as a person.
I think so.
Yeah. So what have we got to talk about today, Chris, besides the usual mental health chat? There's quite a few random things.
Yeah, we got some random things, but what I was reading just this morning, and it only came out 2 days ago, was the World Economic Forum's report about mental health. And not to dwell too much on like bureaucracy and things like this, what I found really interesting was their front and center recommendation was personal responsibility, which is something that you've always preached, and we always talk about. I'm talking about the problem.
Yeah,
you're looking at it from the point of view of a solution, and you're saying, people do have to take personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. So it highlighted that, and there's interventions that people can do, that governments and agencies can do, policymakers, governments, things like this. But the personal responsibility, sleep, social interaction, exercise, all substantially impact. And those things can't be mandated externally. They have to come from inside, right?
Yeah.
So I just thought that was a really interesting sort of point of view to take. And it echoes a lot of what we've been talking about quite recently as well. So I thought it would be good to sort of open with that, really, because one of the other key points of the report was that generations have successively struggled more and more with their mental health, which is another observation that you've made quite recently about how young people's mental health seems to be deteriorating. And this report echoes that and reinforces that subjective point of view that you had, reinforces it with actual, statistics from almost 70,000 people globally.
I'm assuming in the World Economic Forum that it was a lot.
49,000.
Yeah, that's
49,000.
That's quite a good sample size for sure.
Yeah, and it said that they focused exclusively on English-speaking countries, but I think it ended up going beyond that to over 150 different countries. So, and it was put in place as a result of the pandemic, in answer to the problem of mental health during the pandemic. But I think it speaks to a lot of the generational issues that you and I have been discussing lately.
I think there's a lot of people as well, especially young people these days, that are trying too hard to focus on self-care. Self-care is a good thing. Obviously, you're a massive advocate of it yourself, Chris. Right. And there's nothing wrong with self-care because I practice self-care myself. But I think a lot of people try to solve their own problems themselves these days, and they don't. They put off actually getting help as long as possible. And I don't know if it's because they don't have faith in the system to actually get the support they need. But I think more young people need to be willing to go out and get that support and not try and fix all their problems themselves, because sometimes you can't. You do need that extra support outside.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there is I suppose, a fine line. And for anyone listening who wants to know what that fine line is between this can be solved with self-care versus I need some professional help. I would say broadly, get help when it begins to impact your ability to lead the life that you want to lead. So if you feel like how your emotions are affecting you is stopping you from doing the things that you would ordinarily want to do with your life, that would be the time to reach out and get some professional help. And of course, if it's going on for a long time and the self-help activities that you're engaging in are not helping, are not working, or there's a change along the way, it's no longer sort of making you feel better. And it's all to do with impact, I think, the way one feels and the impact it has on one's life.
So I guess, we were we briefly mentioned in the last one about substance abuses and things like that. And I think these all play into that as well, don't they? And, people getting addicted to their vices.
Yeah, absolutely. Or it becoming a crutch. This will help me feel better. There's a bit of a culture here for working for the weekend, working hard to get through till Friday and Saturday night. Then, overdoing it with whatever substances you choose to partake in.
But that signals to me that there is a problem in that person's life that they need to fix. If they are living for the weekend, then there's obviously a clear problem in their work capacity that they need to fix, that they're not obviously getting fulfillment from their job if they are just doing it to live for the weekend.
Yeah, fulfillment from their job or fulfillment from their life. The things that they want to do might not be within their reach. Absolutely.
But is this because of social media? And I think that's what I ask myself, is people are putting everything on a pedestal now because they want to achieve more and more, because they see the things on the internet and on social media telling them that, these people have these lives and I should attain to have that life, even though a lot of them are fake and glamorized to look better than what they actually are, because that's the nature of social media. Really, it's just all, it's just all a complete load of crap, really. It's just a lie. Most of it's just a lie.
Well, when I look at something like Instagram, I'm mainly looking at art and things like these sort of pictures, and occasionally some of the things that friends post. But I'm aware of the fact that a lot of people use social media to project a figment of their own imagination of what they think their ideal life looks like. Yeah, a lot of my friends don't really use social media at all. So I don't get to see too much of that sort of thing in my feeds. And maybe that's also because I've kind of curated my feeds.
Which is good.
For me, yeah, I suppose it's good in one sense. I just like to see art and what people are doing, and Instagram seems to be a really good way of engaging with that.
So you've come with you've kind of gone into social media with that awareness of how social media can be dangerous already. So you've curated your feed and kind of tweaked the algorithm.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I sometimes do catch myself thinking, I'm going to give this picture a like because I'd like to see more of this sort of thing. Just feed the algorithm with what it's looking for. Rather than some of the nonsense with, some guy with a big sports bag full of cash selling a Forex course or something, because there's an awful lot of that as well. There's a really good YouTube channel who roasts these type of sort of gurus, if you like. It's CoffeeZilla. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't. No.
He's just gone through a massive period of roasting the Mayor of London candidate, Brian Rose, who's just a complete goof.
Which one's Brian Rose? I don't know that one.
Brian Rose is the one whose campaign video is him telling London he's war ready and then punching a heavy bag with boxing gloves on and a sweatband around his forehead. He's so
Is
cringe.
he like an independent? He's got to be.
Well, it's the London Real Party, named after his podcast London Real, which got banned from YouTube about a year ago because they interviewed David Icke and spread a lot of misinformation about COVID.
I used to like David Icke back in the day. I used to think he was an interesting guy to listen to. But then the more I've listened and the more I've kind of grown up, I've kind of realized that a lot of his theories are insane.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a healthy place for that sort of insanity. And I do like as well dipping into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I see it more as entertainment rather than fact, So I might dip into, a conspiracy theory about aliens and things like that, just because it's how I relax.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think an awful lot of people are taking these things as a reflection of reality, and that's basing that they're now shifting their paradigm, and that bleeds into real life.
Exactly. I mean, you've got to keep that wall, that barrier, and that like between getting sucked in and going down the rabbit hole. Because I see, you know what, on the topic of mental health, you could probably talk about how that stuff can really cause people to go into a downward spiral.
Yeah, well, there's a really good video on YouTube called The Black Dog, and it's a man's story, and it's animated as well. But it's a man's kind of talking about how he went down a spiral. I think it was bipolar disorder. He lives with bipolar disorder, but he went down a spiral of looking at these kind of conspiracy theory videos and posts and reading all around these things. And then he began to become paranoid. The way the car was parked outside meant that, the FBI were listening to his telephone conversations, reading his posts, reading his brain, these sort of things. And it's a really good one. It is a question that I have been asked on my training courses. So, I train groups of people how to help other people with their mental health. It's called Mental Health First Aid. And I'm always very open. I mean, the course has got a set syllabus that you have to get through, but I want you guys, delegates of the course who come on my course, to be able to ask questions. It's like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's quite a broad phrase, but I approach it with that sort of intent. And someone asked me once, conspiracy theorists, are they mentally unwell? And that's a really interesting question to examine, I think. I don't
know.
No? You think no?
I don't know. Mental health is such a broad spectrum, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, it's so hard to pinpoint.
And just like you say, mental health's on a spectrum. I think conspiracy theories are on a spectrum. And I think people who go down the rabbit hole is on a spectrum. And it always comes back to that point of view that I always have, which is if someone asks me a question about mental health and on whether this is or that is, and this isn't and that is, it's down to the impact, I think. It's down to the impact on one's life. So,
I actually have quite a few conspiracy theorists in my family.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, so my uncle, I'm not going to name names, but my uncle is really bad, as in, yeah, he went down the whole, thought people were watching him. He won't have, I think my mum said he won't have a phone because he thinks people are, tapping in, and he hasn't paid council tax and things like that in years because apparently he found an old book in a library that says that if you do, there's some old law, if you do this and that, you don't have to pay it. So he's just like, he keeps reciting this old law. Like, would you say that he's got mental health problems then? I'd
like a copy of that book, or at least somewhere that I can find that book. Would I say he's got mental health problems? Well, what's the impact? How
the impact is he has no friends. He very rarely goes out. He lives in a very small flat, and he's past the point of introvert now.
Okay. Well, I think there's a very obvious effect on his life there, and perhaps re-examining his relationship with the outside world through the prism of conspiracy would be really helpful for him. I think maybe getting some counseling, maybe talking through it. I mean, there's a line. He's kind of, in one sense, he's kind of right, isn't he? Because our phones are monitoring what we're searching, and the cookies are being placed. Like, the cookies are a tracker, and if it said, "Do you accept trackers from this website?" you would definitely say no. But it's a cookie, and some of these sites carry an awful lot of cookies. So he's right in one sense, but it's not just a mobile phone. It's also it's your browser, really, isn't it? So it's Google, it's Bing, it's whatever browser you're using to search, unless you take some sort of action against it, is gathering data and information about you and then passes that through to advertisers who then, weaponize that information and advertise to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So to a certain extent, he's right, and I think that's what the point of, it being on a scale, on a spectrum is, your point about being on a spectrum is relevant.
I suppose if you're a counselor as well, like you say, he should, probably try counseling or something like that. Is one of the techniques they would use for someone like that, do they have to get down on their level and kind of, because you were saying, he's partly right, which he is. So is that one technique that they would use when they were trying to, I guess, rationalize with him and kind of bring him back?
Good question. And it really depends on the type of counseling that a person engages with. There's an awful lot of different types of counseling, which is one of the barriers. It makes things very complicated for people when they want to reach out for help. What variety of counseling do I need? Well, I don't know. But what the NHS tends to rely on, and what a lot of what we call employee advisory services, so like the in-house counseling service that a lot of employers have, but they subscribe to CBT. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it runs like this. So there's the ABC principle to cognitive behavioral therapy. There's the activating event. That's the A. That's the first bit. That's the thing that happens in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The B is the belief you have about that event. So for example, I was listening to Spotify at the same time that I was talking to my wife, and I said, I really fancy a sandwich. And then I log into Google and I see an advert for like a sandwich company, like maybe Subway. What's my belief about that? I believe I'm being listened to.
Yeah, that is creep. Is that coincidence or
Good question.
Is it a coincidence? Because that's happened to me and numerous people I know.
Apparently these algorithms are so good at predicting human behavior, but I don't know, maybe there is, a microphone that's always on that's listening in your device. But anyway, that's the belief. So the activating event is I'm hungry. And I have a conversation with my wife about wanting a sandwich. And then the result of that is the advert for a sandwich. My belief about that then feeds through into the consequence. So ABC. And the consequence is maybe I don't go out because I'm too afraid of people listening to me. Maybe I don't have a sandwich, try and trick the algorithm into thinking that I'm not hungry. Or maybe I just go and get a sandwich and I rationalize it that, I'll investigate how these cookies can be, protected against or something like that. I'm not sure I'm explaining it particularly well, but cognitive behavioral therapy runs on that principle. There's an activating event. There's the belief or the feeling we have as a result of that. And then a therapist or a counselor working with CBT, working with an individual will examine how and why you felt that way. And what are some other avenues or pathways you could take instead? So instead of getting angry,
I was going to say, I think that's a good, evaluation of CBT, because I was offered a similar thing for my pain. And I think the nice guidelines now are that people who have chronic pain should be offered CBT and I think psychological therapy, physiotherapy instead of prescription pain medicine, because NICE believe that it's more beneficial for people with unknown pain of unknown origin. So like they don't know what causes it. You've just got pain, which I guess is me. So yeah, I've been offered CBT and they've explained it to me. And I think what you said is pretty spot on. But
good.
I don't know if, for someone like myself, I don't know if CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is a good idea. Because for a start, I don't believe that the pain I have is in my mind. I believe it. I believe it is physical. But
it is
with
physical.
With CBT, they're trying to teach you that it is in your mind. It's not as a result of anything with your body. It's something that, is all in your brain. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that personally.
Yeah, sure. And not everything is for everybody. But where I would disagree with you on the point of view that CBT is telling you that the pain is all in your head. No, the pain is real. The pain is 100% real, and it bloody hurts. How you feel about the pain is where the interaction would take place, where the magic could be weaved. You can't take the pain away. That's obvious. That's been there for years. But how you feel about the pain. So let's take that ABC approach. The activating event is I have pain. The belief is I will never lead a normal life as a result of this pain, and it's going to disable me forever. The consequence is I never achieve all the things that I possibly could achieve in life. A therapist might say, well, hold on. There's a filling in this sandwich, the B part. There's a middle element here, which we might be able to interact with to see if we can change your quality of life. So why do you believe that you can never live a normal life as a result, or never achieve the highest heights that you have ambitions for as a result of this pain? Is there a way of looking at it from a different point of view? Can you get through? Are there some days better than others? And on the days when they are better than others, can you do more? Can you work towards your dreams? Can you work towards fulfilling the things that you want to do as part of your activities of daily living? That, I think, if you will permit me, is to say where I think it might be helpful for someone with chronic pain. But it's just a point of view.
No, I've had that part explained to me as well.
Oh, okay, good.
By various specialists. So I suppose on the part that you were elaborating on, then yes, that kind of makes sense. In that, I guess it's more of a therapy of acceptance, then, isn't it? And learning to live with it rather than overcoming it. Because
yeah, and that's why I'm sure the self-help stuff that they've told you about as well is meditation. I mean, has anyone, I would be...
Yeah, actually, meditation was in the NICE guidelines. Well, like self-help and, meditation. I don't know if they called it exactly meditation. I can't believe the term they used.
Mindfulness?
But it was, yes. Yeah, it was mindfulness. But that whole sphere's, like, meditation's a part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, meditation is like a broad concept that's been going on for thousands of years. Mindfulness is the practice of engaging in meditation, but it's devoid of any religion. You see, because some people it might be a barrier for some people, that meditation is a part of a particular religious sect. And if you are particularly religious of another sect or another organization or another religion, then it might be a barrier for using that. So it's completely devoid of religion, mindfulness is. And it's repackaged meditation in a way that's very appetizing to a lot of people in the modern world. And and it works. It's good. So if anyone listening interested in checking out a little bit more about meditation, it won't take long. If you have Netflix, check out the Headspace series. Videos are 20 minutes each. If you don't like the first one, you're probably not going to like the rest of them, but it's worth dipping in. If you've been interested in meditation and maybe you've always wanted to try it but never knew how, perfect introduction for you.
And the initial steps are pretty basic, as you taught me, Chris. It's just, breathing exercises and just learning to detach yourself from everything around you is how I would describe it, and just have a moment of peace.
Yeah, it's just finding peace. And I mean, the book Finding Peace in a Frantic World is like one of the cornerstone texts. I used to have 10 of those books. Now I have none because I gave them to clients in the hope that I would get them back. And then, chasing people to give them back to me just became icky. It didn't feel right. That meditation book is really helping you. I need it back because other people need it. And it just became like, just let it go. And now I tell people to buy it for themselves or get it from a library. And the place that I work, we've got, a stack of them in the actual library so people can go and get it. But yeah, it's finding peace, getting away from yourself in some sense. It's stopping that hamster wheel of thought And if you're in pain, I can imagine it's so grinding.
And it's also very hard to find inner peace with meditation when you're in chronic pain. Initially it is very hard to block it out, because it seems like no matter how much you try, it's still there. And I think you never really, just from experience, you never really block it out. Meditation is like meditating with chronic pain is meditating on the pain and learning to manage the pain, is the way I would describe it. Like, it doesn't, if anyone thinks it's a magic bullet where the pain just disappears, it doesn't, but it's a very good technique for learning to manage it and have that moment of peace with it.
I hope that makes sense, because that's a really good point of view from someone who's lived it and done it. I haven't had, touch wood, a chronic pain condition and had to meditate through it, but I've had some incredibly bad dental pain. And the thought of someone coaching me to sit and just breathe through the pain would have been, I would have been furious about it. So I completely understand if people have reservations about approaching it, and it's not a thing that you can appreciate the benefit of just by us talking about it. It's not something that you can appreciate the benefit of by reading about it online. You have to do it, and you won't appreciate the benefit of it even after the first go. You will need to establish a practice and have some discipline. And I think, for me anyway, the prism through which I talk about meditation is for people to gain some discipline around and about their emotions. Yeah. So we eat healthily to discipline our body. We exercise to discipline our cardiovascular system, and we meditate to discipline our emotional state, our emotional system. And so if meditation can help control the pain, great. But if it can also interact with how you feel about that pain, or if you can just sort of turn off going round and round in circles about this hurts so much. This hurts so much. When is this going to go away? Maybe tomorrow I'll have a better day than today. Just get off that hamster wheel of constant thought and just be, because there's an awful lot of things in life requiring your attention and requiring you to do things. Sometimes it's nice to just be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really good way to summarize it for someone like me who does it. That last point is pretty much spot on. You're not doing it to get rid of it. You're doing it's to have that moment of peace with it, which is actually quite nice.
Yeah, and it's a paradox as well, isn't it? Have you ever noticed when you're doing it that you get to that moment of peace and you go, oh, I'm there, and now it's gone? The more you try and grasp that peace, that moment, that element of not thinking, the harder it is, because now you're thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I find it really hard to describe it personally, like how I felt when I've done it. But I still, like I say, I would not say from my personal perspective that it goes away. Like I don't have this moment of clarity when the pain vanishes. I don't know if that means I need to go deeper, but I still have that moment of peace with it, and it gives this really strange, like you say, it's almost an impression that it's not as it's there, but it's not as intense. And I guess because your brain is not focused on so many other things, and it's just focused on that moment, that it's still there, but it's not an issue at that moment. It's so hard to describe.
It's not an issue for your present mind at the moment, because your present mind is being present in the moment.
But it is still there, but it is not an issue. It's so hard to describe, but yeah.
So do you think that could correlate to how it can be of benefit to people who are having a tough time with their emotions or with their mental health? Or
Yeah. Because the whole, meditating for physical pain that you feel versus mental pain, I would imagine that meditation has different sets of benefits for both. I think you can probably apply it differently for each use case. Is that right?
I think so. And the thing as well that we have to remember is when we spoke about meditation and you went off and you did it, that was just one way. There's lots of ways. So what I gave you, or what I told you to do, was it's based on a principle that you don't need ephemeral things or external things to do it, because there's so many ways that people have monetized meditation and mindfulness now. That people sometimes think, oh, I need an app to do it, or I need a book, or I need a YouTube video. You can do it that way. But what I try and get people to do is to learn the skill or learn the practice of doing it. So you can do it anytime you want, regardless of whether your internet's down or not. You don't need to have to connect to an external server with a guided meditation on it so that you can do it. But that's not for everybody.
Or even an app.
Exactly. Exactly.
So do you, I don't know, I'd be curious then, what do you think of the commercialization of things like mental health, mindfulness, meditation? Coming as like, I can tell every time I talk to you how passionate you are about it. Does it upset you a little bit seeing it get commercialized so much? Or are you happy that it's getting more, more people are giving it a try, it's getting more awareness?
I'm definitely happy that it's increasing awareness and more people are trying. So when we look at meditation, it's good that more people are trying it. However, I do have reservations that people are maybe become reliant on the external thing to actually do it. And I meet a lot of people where I'm talking to them about their mental health and right, so what's your self-help strategies? What are you doing to help yourself? They say exercise, things like this. And I'm like, okay, so have you tried meditation? Oh yeah, I've got the app on my phone. I'm like, okay, cool. So when was the last time you tried it? You actually did it? Oh, I haven't used it for ages, but the app's there. And that false sense of security or false sense of belief that having it there for when I need it, having it there when I need it is enough. Prevention's better than cure, no? So I think it's best to have a practice to safeguard against problems. And then if the problems come, then do it a bit more. In terms of the commercialization of mental health, there's a lot of really good businesses and really good approaches that are really working out there. So the thing that I signed up to and subscribed to is Mental Health First Aid, and I'm an accredited trainer to do that, and I have been since 2014, so that's like an awful long time now. So if I didn't believe in that and the power that that can have for people and organizations, communities and businesses, I would have left it behind a long time ago. But it's a really good framework, and it codifies into a set of principles that are applicable in almost all cases that can be used by the people that we've trained to help. So that's great. But then there's another approach with this quite interesting company, which is run more like a startup. And that's why it appeals to lots of young people and lots of startup type businesses. It's called Sanctus, and they have a mental health coaching system whereby they'll send one of their Sanctus coaches into a business as many times as you want. If you want them, if you want a coach there for a month, 1 day a month, or if you want them there every day, or you want them there 1 day a week, to just be there and be the mental health coach, the Sanctus coach. And then people can drop in whenever they want. Oh, the coach is in session today. The coach is there. I'll go and see them, talk about how I'm doing. So there's innumerable different ways that mental health support has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Has been sort of institutionalized, maybe that's not the right word, but, formed into businesses that help. So as long as it's helping, I'm good with it. Yeah, absolutely. And the more approaches there are, the better, as long as it's tried and tested, as long as it works. So there's a really good app that I was using called Youper. And I like it because you're talking to AI And I don't know how people feel about this, but if you interact with this app, Youper, you have to agree for them to use your data, so your responses. So don't share stuff that you wouldn't want, to be on an AI server in San Francisco or whatever. But what I liked about it is that I didn't have to talk to anyone else, because some people, they just can't fathom sharing with another human being how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So how can people like that be helped? Well, talk to a computer. Would that work for you? Okay, and Youper, just to close the loop on Looper, it's like a mood journaling app, but you're interacting with an AI. It's asking you how you're doing. Well, I'm a little bit tense.
Isn't that kind of sad though, that some people cannot talk to another human being and they have to use an AI to do that?
Yeah, it is. It is sad, but then if that's the only way to overcome the barriers of accessing some help, then what's wrong with it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely see your point.
Maybe it helps opening the door. But yeah, it would be sad. But I know plenty of people. I say plenty. I know I can think of 4 right now who I know I would be massively shocked if they went to a counsellor, or even if they went to their GP to talk about their mental health. And
what about their friends, family?
No, I mean, I've got buddies who I know I can talk to if I'm in a crisis or if I'm struggling. And I know there's people that I just wouldn't ever think of picking up the phone to call if I was in a crisis. I'm sure they'd be supportive, but I just never would think to do that because they just don't seem to have that part of them. I'm sure it is. I'm sure they lead emotional lives with feelings and stuff. But there are people that I just wouldn't, because I don't think that they would understand the language that I would use. And I would imagine that those people would be the same ones that would never walk through a GP's office and say, I'm struggling, or pick up the phone to Samaritans and say, help me.
Yeah.
But if there's an app there that they become aware of, that they can pick up and say, feeling a bit anxious and tense today, I've got meetings that I don't want to do, or I've got, this problem with my wife that I can't get over. And then the app can help them. Then, I'm fully behind that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's an interest. That's kind of made me think a little bit, because I suppose I'd initially be, as someone who's massively into tech, but is also very skeptical of tech, I would be very skeptical of that to begin with, just in my own brain, simply because I think we should be encouraging. But I suppose you agree, right? As the first line kind of treatment, you would probably be trying to get them to discuss with people rather than a machine.
Yeah, and that loops nicely back to the report we were talking about at the start, the World Economic Forum report we were talking at the start. The 3 main principles, if I can remember them, were sleep, exercise, and social interaction. So yeah, I mean, perfect. But not everyone can talk to friends. And we especially find that with some of the challenges with guys, with men, which is why, looping back to episode 1, that Roman Kemp documentary was so enlightening for me, that he's going to talk to groups of men about how they feel about their friends' suicide and things like that. And it wasn't just men as well. It was young boys, like teenage boys, ones who would, rightly or wrongly, I may have expected to be much harder to reach about feelings and thoughts and challenges with your mental health. But yeah, the preference, I think, I'm not a snob when it comes to mental health support at all. And my preference would be whatever works for you. I mean, I have the same approach to whiskey. I'm not a whiskey snob at all. The best sort of whiskey is the type of whiskey that you like to drink, drunk in the way that you like to drink it. Yeah, there's a lot of people who will say, no, whiskey must be enjoyed, in this very clear...
In a glass with ice.
No.
Glass with ice, no. Single malt.
Yeah, but ice would be considered by many to be a complete no-no. But, as the ice melts, it changes the flavor. So, mental health support is whatever works.
That's why you've got to knock it back straight after the ice. Anyway, we'll
So yeah,
I don't even drink. No, go on. I was going to say I don't even drink whiskey anymore. I'm in these days. It's about gin for me. But
okay.
Another conversation. Keep going.
But yeah, I mean, just to close that loop, I suppose it's whatever works for the individual, and some people don't know what works, and so that's where someone like me can come in and say, well, here are the options. Here's the roadmaps. Here's the roadmaps for support. Here's what you can do. And if it works, great. If not, come back and talk to me again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got 10 minutes left, right? So I want to ask you one last thing, because talking about mental health, talking about mindfulness, talking about all these things and, the benefits of them, because I think we're both in agreement that they are beneficial. And we've obviously talked about people with conspiracy theories who go down a rabbit hole and go a bit loopy. Can the same thing happen with, your own mindfulness? Can you go down a rabbit hole of mindfulness and then go too far? You can.
Yeah, absolutely. My meditation teacher told me, shout out to Hagetsu, my Zen meditation coach. She told me that I need to keep my feet firmly on the ground when I meditate, because I do have a tendency to go off into the clouds. That's a long story for another thing, because my journey with meditation has been very funky at times. But I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, I've got a job. And the more time I spend trying to achieve some dream or figment of my imagination of oneness or wholeness, the more I need to keep my feet on the ground. So it was around about a time a couple of years ago where I had read about a Buddhist monk who had died meditating. And that this was 100 years ago.
What?
Yeah, 100 years ago. And he was in deep meditation when he died. And they put sensors on him now, his body, which was sort of semi-mummified in a temple. And they put monitors on him, and they found that there was like fragments or slight traces of brain signals still going on. Now, I'm too stupid to understand whether that's normal from a, post-death biological point of view. I'm sure I could find out if I was so inclined, but no. What I was much more inclined to do was, what do you mean? He's like got some sort of eternal life through meditation.
Yeah, like he's ascended.
100%. And I went to see a Buddhist monk, and a former Buddhist monk actually. And I spoke to him at great length, and he entertained me, and he just had this quizzical look on his face about, why is this guy so obsessed with it? And when I'd spoken to Hagetsu, she's such a good coach. She impressed upon me the importance of, there's a time and a place for up there, but right now, grounded. Please stay grounded. Don't go off. And I have a bit of a tendency to go down the rabbit hole, so I have to rein that in. Otherwise, what would be the impact? Probably if I spent all day, every day meditating and trying to reach this other place that, is probably a figment of my imagination. But my reaction was exactly the same as yours. Wow. Like, he's gone to another plane, but he's still here in one way. His physical representation is still here in one way. And he's achieved something, way beyond. And what would it be like to try and reach that oneself? So, you can definitely fall down the rabbit hole of all of these self-care things. I had a client a couple of years ago. I know we're short of time, but I had a client a couple of years ago who'd read online that exercise was great for their mental health. So what did they do? They were
over-exercise, probably.
Yeah, they were intensely stressed. And they felt helpless to actually tackle the cause of the stress. So instead, they tried to tackle the feeling of stress, and they read that exercise was great. So what they did is they went and they exercised, and they got fitter and stronger, and took it to the next extreme, to the point where they were taking their tent on their back and running for a whole weekend, and then sleeping in a tent and running.
So it was just taking all of their stress out on the exercise, basically.
Yeah, and that person ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome and lost 18 months of their life because
that's terrible.
Stress compounded on top of physical stress, compounded on top of emotional work-related stress, compounded on top of more physical stress to just cause a crash.
Yeah.
And it's a long, hard road out of chronic fatigue for that person. But they got there. They got there, which is great. They did the hard work. I was just, there for the ride. They did the hard work. They did the stuff. They lived through it. They found a way. That's another interesting thing, man. Chronic fatigue and the way people interact with it and manage it is fascinating.
Yeah. It's another one that's on the spectrum of, the chronic pain stuff and fibromyalgia and things like that, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
There's so many of them.
The medical world are like, well, let's see what fits. Should we try antidepressants? Okay, that didn't work. What should we try? Graded exercise therapy? How about physiotherapy? Absolutely right. Let's, throw enough stuff at the wall and see what sticks for this individual person. And oftentimes...
The problem is, especially with fibromyalgia, some people are in so much pain because it affects your joints that they can't do the exercise that they need to get the benefit, because they do say that if you don't, if you keep yourself moving with chronic pain, it makes the pain better. And I can vouch for that. If there's days where I'm really lazy, I feel worse. So there is this thing about, you do have to keep active. And I don't know if it's a mental thing. It's probably a chemical thing about your body pumping like endorphins or whatever you get from exercise, just to kind of, keep the blood flowing. And I don't know the biological stuff.
I would say that's what it is. Keeping the blood moving, keeping all the systems, flushing all the waste products out, things like that.
But how do you do that if you've got fibromyalgia so bad that you can't even stand up? How do they expect you to ever get to that point?
Yeah, it's incredibly painful, and fibromyalgia incredibly challenging with chronic fatigue. Incredibly difficult to pull oneself through it. And what I find generally is most people cure themselves, find a way themselves. They try so many different things that they found a way eventually. And we see that with long COVID now as well. Long COVID's coming through, specialist clinics getting set up. A lot of people are trying to find a way through. It's tough because modern medicine doesn't always have, the cure, the right answer, and every body is different.
How do you feel about things like, because we mentioned it, we're having like a little back and forth on WhatsApp a couple of days ago about things like spirituality, healing crystals, all that sort of alternative medicine, herbalistic medicine. You said, if it works for that person, then they should do it. And I am in agreement with that. But is there a point where it can encapsulate your life too much and that person needs to take a step back and think, is this actually benefiting me or is it making things worse?
Well, when you're thinking about these sort of things, I always come back to who is preaching this to you and how much are they charging?
That is a very good point.
So are you getting ripped off? Are you feeling better versus are you getting ripped off? And which, can you afford it? Which is how can you balance that? You see a lot of that with some of this goop stuff, how much are they charging for the candle that's going to, make your room smell good and make you improve your mood? This sort of stuff. Yeah. I was down a couple of years ago in Hackney Market, one of the markets in Hackney, I want to say Broadway Market, and there was someone selling water that was infused with electrons. I was like, how does this work then? And all these sort of enchanted naths getting ripped off by the man with the ionized water. You got to think of it in a balance, I think, of, what's reasonable and if it's helping. It's a tricky one. Crystals, Reiki, spirituality don't, to my knowledge, have a strong basis in science that it actually works. But then, a lot of things that make people feel better don't have a strong basis in science, and the placebo effect is based in science. And so maybe there's something there. And if you do the Reiki, you buy the crystals, you drink the ionized water, and you think it's going to make you feel better, then maybe you will. Maybe you will. The placebo effect's based on a really fascinating story. I won't take long. Of a physician like 200 years ago, something like this. When someone was coming to him with cancer, he gave them a pill and told them, this will melt your tumor. And then they took the pill and the tumor melted. And then afterwards they asked what was in the pill. And he said it was nothing. It was just a sugar sweet. And then the tumor came back.
Is this a true story?
I believe so. It's the foundation of what the placebo effect is. It's either an anecdotal story that I was reading when it comes to the placebo effect, or it's based in actual, solid truth. I like to think it's the latter rather than the former. I'm pretty certain that the doctor's name is escaping me.
That's it for episode 3 of the Mind Games podcast. I have been Thomas Wellburn, and he has been Chris Allan. Or do you want to say that yourself, Chris?
That's cool.
And we really hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making it. And if you would like to subscribe, please do. And we'll be back again for even more.